Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. Thanks for taking time out of your day to check the video out. We have more PlayStation news, rumors, and leaks to go over and cover here today. So we're starting here with some interesting information coming from an industry insider about not only a potential PlayStation showcase, but also how 2025 is expected to be for PlayStation. This is being reported by PlayStation Lifestyle. They say a known insider reckons that 2025 will be PS5's best year in terms of exclusives and content following a bit of a drought. Sony has published quite a few exclusives this year, but first-party PlayStation studios have seen a bit of a lull, which is set to change with some relatively smaller games, including Concord, Astrobot, and LEGO Horizon Adventures. Insider Nate the Hate, who has a pretty good reputation, said in a recent podcast that PS5 is primed to have a strong 2025, with PlayStation studios all quietly cooking. He's the view that next year might be PS5's best year in this entire generation, and he's fairly confident that players will hear more from Sony in fall 2024. Nate the Hate shared these views nearly 2 weeks ago, but they are particularly noteworthy now because Sony recently announced its financial results in fiscal year 2024, during which it acknowledged a lack of tentpole games. In the same earnings call, Sony promised that PlayStation Studios will aim to consistently and continuously release hit titles following a restructuring exercise earlier this year. So this is interesting because we are getting closer to September and all eyes are on PlayStation this September to see, are they going to do a showcase? Is there going to be an event? Are they going to reveal the PS5 Pro? This is something we've kind of been hearing all throughout this year, which is 2025 is primed to be a big year for PlayStation. And when you think about it, we don't know that much about 2025 when it comes to PlayStation Studios. We know about Marathon, and recently we heard that it might actually slip beyond 2025 from Jason Schreier. And we also know about Death Stranding 2, which is one of my most anticipated games. But outside of that, we really don't have any type of proper roadmap, and it just seems like now or very soon is the time when Sony would come out and have more to say. But I just wanted to report on this because I did see quite a few of you talking about it. And so, yeah, Nate the Hate says we should be hearing from PlayStation in Q3 of this year, which begins September. And he believes that 2025 is going to be possibly the biggest year for PlayStation this generation. So hopefully it's true. But moving on from that, we have Sony coming out and saying that even though they don't have any tentpole titles this year, they're still seeing high engagement on their platform. PlayStation Lifestyle reports Sony has revealed that PlayStation saw high user engagement in the first quarter of fiscal year 2024 despite a lack of tentpole PS5 exclusives during that time period. The last big blockbuster Sony released was Insomniac Games' Spider-Man 2 in October 2023, but the company did publish some well-received console exclusives this year, like Helldivers 2. Announcing its first quarter financial results for fiscal year 24 this week, Sony told investors in an earnings call that user engagement remained high during the period due to an expanding PS5 install base and contributions from solid franchise software titles. PlayStation recorded 116 million monthly active users in June, including PC, which is its highest number ever recorded for the month. Besides an increasing PS5 base, user engagement was boosted by Helldivers 2 and Ghost of Tsushima's PC release. Rise of the Ronin and Stellar Blade saw robust sales as well. So yeah, this is something that I think is worth highlighting. We've talked about Sony reporting their earnings when it comes to the console, how well the PS5 is selling, how it's tracking, but obviously in this day and age, engagement is a very important metric, maybe even the most important, and apparently Sony is saying that PlayStation's still doing really well in this area. Moving on from that, we have an interesting topic here where apparently a studio that was set to shut down, and people were very upset about this, it's not actually shutting down, it's been saved. And an IP that was owned by Microsoft is no longer owned by Microsoft. This is, again, coming from PlayStation Lifestyle. Players who had their fingers crossed for Hi-Fi Rush 2 have received a glimmer of hope as PUBG and Callisto Protocol publisher Krafton has acquired the IP. Not only that, but Krafton has also purchased Tango Gameworks from Microsoft, preventing a complete shutdown of the studio. The announcement, which took everyone by surprise, came via a press release early morning today. The South Korean publisher confirmed that not only will Tango Gameworks continue operating, it will also continue developing the Hi-Fi Rush IP and explore future projects. Krafton's deal with Xbox Game Studios only seems limited to the acquisition of Tango Gameworks and Hi-Fi Rush, so we don't know what Microsoft's plans are for Tango Gameworks and their other IP, including The Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo. Krafton says that its deal will have no impact on Tango's existing catalog, which is to be expected. So, yeah, this was something that caught everybody by surprise because we heard not that long ago that Microsoft was planning to shutter Tango Gameworks. A lot of people were shocked by that, considering Hi-Fi Rush was, a beloved title and something that seemingly did well for Xbox. And there were a lot of people who were hoping for a sequel to Hi-Fi Rush. And now Krafton comes in, they buy the studio, and they buy the Hi-Fi Rush IP. So they seem to believe that there's potential for the Hi-Fi Rush IP here, enough to where I think it's safe to say they're probably going to make a full-blown sequel. It's also interesting to think that, again, this is the owner of the Callisto Protocol IP, and apparently that game didn't do nearly as well as Krafton had hoped. They do own Striking Distance Studio, the studio that made the Callisto Protocol. I do wonder if maybe after they do something more with Hi-Fi Rush, if in the future we could see a situation where this studio, Tango Gameworks, is working on maybe something in the Callisto Protocol universe. I say this because, they made horror games like The Evil Within and The Evil Within 2, so they do have expertise and experience in that area. But either way, it's good to see that the studio is going to live on, and we'll see if we do end up getting a Hi-Fi Rush 2. If we do, it'll clearly be a multi-platform title. Moving on to the next topic, we have a insider report regarding Black Myth Wukong. It's coming out very soon. This comes from Lunatic Ignis, who's been giving us information about Black Myth Wukong. He says here, like Tom Henderson said, the review copies for Black Myth Wukong are out, but currently only for PC. However, don't panic. As I stated before, the game runs at 2K 60 FPS or 1440p 60 FPS and 4K 30 FPS on PS5. The developers also have planned a 4K 60 FPS, even if it's almost impossible, and PS5 codes are going to be closer to launch. He says, note, they just got the PC codes earlier. This is not uncommon in the gaming industry. So there's a couple of really interesting things here. First off, Black Myth Wukong reviews are going to be out well ahead of the game's release. This is a very good sign. Shows confidence, right? And this is a game that I think a lot of people are eagerly awaiting to hear about when it comes to reviews, because it's one of these games that looks very good. In some cases, maybe seems too good to be true. Is it going to live up to the hype? On top of that, though, reaffirming 1440p 60 FPS, 4K 60 FPS on PS5, but saying they're even striving for a native 4K 60 FPS. Now, I don't think that's going to be possible on the base PS5, to be honest. It's an Unreal Engine 5 game. I just don't see that happening. Maybe he's hinting at a potential PS5 Pro update for Black Myth Wukong on the PS5. If the base PS5 can't hit native 4K 60 FPS, maybe that's where the Pro comes in. But yeah, this is a game I'm looking forward to. I know a lot of you are as well, so I figured I would give you this update. But we are going to move on to the final topic here, which is further insight into the Last of Us multiplayer cancellation being reported by PlayStation Lifestyle. The Last of Us multiplayer's cancellation apparently resulted in some serious internal repercussions at Sony. That's according to journalist and insider Jason Schreier, who revealed that, quote, heads were rolled, end quote, at the company, leading to speculations that a high-ranking executive may have been fired in the aftermath. Speaking on a recent episode of the Friends Per Second podcast, Schreier revealed that The Last of Us multiplayer, also referred to as Factions, was in development for 4 years before it was canned. What's more is that hundreds of people were working on the project, so its cancellation wasn't, in quotes here, wasn't bloodless, end quote, according to Schreier. The whole thing ended up being very costly, and although Naughty Dog averted a live service disaster, someone did end up paying the price. Although I think it's a little bit unfair to say they averted a live service disaster. We don't know if it would have been disastrous. But The article continues by saying, based on the timeline of events, fans are speculating that it was veteran PlayStation executive Connie Booth who was ousted following Sony's live service collapse and saw a number of projects shelved. Booth had spent over 25 years at Sony before reports emerged that she was suddenly fired. It wasn't until news of her departure made rounds that Sony confirmed she was no longer with the company. It's also worth noting that at the time of The Last of Us's cancellation, that's when Jim Ryan announced his abrupt retirement. Again, not going to say whether or not, he was asked to step down. I'm just going to say, it happened at around the same time. But yeah, I suspected that at some point we were going to get more information, likely from Jason Schreier, on The Last of Us Online cancellation. And it sounds just as bad as we thought it was, where it's like, yeah, this is a AAA multiplayer game that was in development for 4 years. A AAA development timeline. It certainly had a AAA budget, and it's just non-existent now. Just completely shelved, completely canceled. Yeah, that sounds like that's a big enough deal, considering Naughty Dog is Sony's like crown jewel studio, to get people fired. So figured I would just give you guys this update, but that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative. If you did, leave it a like, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.